Toastmaster. How many of you guys have had some sort of losses financially, maybe bankruptcy or lost money in stocks or property? Anybody? Yeah, it's very painful, isn't it? It's very painful, yeah. I personally myself also kind of feel that way. I have suffered some losses myself as a result of bad choices, and it's very painful. It's very painful, and I have to find a way to deal with it. A lot of times I forget about it, but sometimes it comes back. So what do I do? How do I deal with it? And it's almost a life and death struggle for me, because it's not the money that was gone that is the problem. It's why, how, what happened, why was I not paying attention, what was the mistakes I did, and those sort of things are very hard. But a lot of people, they cannot survive that, unfortunately, and they lose their whole life, they lose their whole hope. What did they do? Some of them, they just give up on life. So today I'm going to share a story of someone who lost a lot but was very grateful about life. He was just this special person that I look up to. Anytime I'm feeling down, feeling upset or sad, I look up to him and I see how he did it. So we all have to have somebody like that. We have to be reminded. We have to remind ourselves that you're never alone. A lot of people have financial losses, and it doesn't mean it's the end. So you just gotta have to be strong enough and move forward. And that's where I'm gonna share a story of a gentleman by the name of Frank Kimball. Frank Kimball was a very hardworking gentleman from New Hampshire. He and his brothers decided to move to Oakland right after a Civil War in 1864. So he came to Oakland because he was a carpenter. Basically, he was a manual guy, carpenter, and there was a lot of jobs in Oakland. It was a huge boom of construction, construction boom, so he decided to come over to Oakland and work, and he came along with his three brothers, so all four of them came to Oakland. So he worked very hard in Oakland, saved up some money after a couple of years. Then he was a very visionary guy. Since he was a visionary guy, he just didn't think about, putting the money in his pocket and having a good life. What he did was, he thought about investing his money. So what he could do? He thought to himself, he said, let me buy a piece of land. And he came all the way down here, and he bought 26,000 acres of land from a gentleman, which was a ranch at the time. And he called it National City. That's what we have, National City. 26,000 acres of land he purchased. But since he was a visionary guy, he just didn't think about having the land as a ranch and keeping horses or farming. He decided to turn it into a city. He wanted to develop it. But there were no people here to live there. It was pretty much empty. So where is he going to get people from? He goes back to New Hampshire, convinces his relatives, his cousins, his long-distance relatives and people from anybody, just please come to National City. It's a beautiful place. It's right next to the ocean. It's the bay. You're going to enjoy it. So he convinced a handful of people. They all moved down to National City. So slowly and slowly, he got more people coming from New Hampshire. And eventually, it was a community. There was houses. And he realized he needed a church for these people. So he built a church for them. Then there were little kids growing up. Then he realized he needs a school. So he went and built a school out of his own pocket. But there were no teachers. So he then sent somebody all the way to San Francisco to find a really good teacher, a very famous teacher at the time. And he paid her with land. Since he didn't have money, all his money was invested in land. So the teacher came from San Francisco and became a teacher of what is now National City High School. At the time, it was probably National City School too, who knows. And he paid her with land. Then people started dying, so he donated land for a cemetery. Then he realized people need jobs, so he built factories, orchards, and all these things, and he had jobs, especially for women. So women can work too. And so the women started working. And then we should be thankful to him because he is one of the reasons why we have railroad in San Diego. He donated 10,000 acres of his land to the railroad so that railroad could come from New Mexico all the way to the bay, San Diego Bay. And now he did all this because he was very smart, he was a hard worker, he was visionary, and because he knew that in order to be able to do all this, you have to be able to not only be a hard worker, but be able to have jack of all trades. So he was a developer, he was a carpenter, he had all the necessities that he needed to do to develop the city. So he built roads, he established a very grateful, a nice society, a very peaceful, beautiful society, a natural city. And slowly people just keep coming down. And by 1885, he was a millionaire. He had multi-million dollars because he owned the land, the development. He opened real estate offices, factories, and anything and everything that a society, a community needs. He was the head of it, so basically he owned it. But unfortunately, in 1890s, he had lost it all. He had lost all his money. He lost all his money, and when he was 70 years old, he went back to work doing manual labor to support himself and his wife. Wow. And they had no kids. And they rented a one room from his nephew's house so they could live there. But he wasn't regretful. He said, throughout my life, I spent all my life trying to make everybody happy. But I came across so many ungrateful people. And he said, I don't regret, I lived a good life, and I tried my best. And he was able to buy his house back. At least he was able to buy his house back at the age of 70-something years old. So when I think of Frank Kimball, I just forget about my small problems. And I know that we're not the only ones who have small problems. So we always have to think about other people, and they will be our motivation to just move forward. Madam Toastmaster.